going to take a look at simplifying math expressions that have imaginary numbers. The two things to keep in mind is that in my final simplified form, I should not have an exponent other than a 1 with an imaginary number. The second thing is the order I need to be in is a plus bi. That means a would be any constant value, and if there is an imaginary number, it needs to go at the end of the expression. I'm also going to be referring back to these things about our imaginary numbers raised to an exponent. If I do have an exponent other than 1, I need to find the equivalent form of it. So let's begin with these two examples. The top example is just a matter of combining like terms. This one I want to focus on the correct order. 7 is my only constant, which means my expression would simplify starting with the number 7. Next I can combine the 3i and the minus 8i, and that would become minus 5i. That's the correct order my simplified expression needs to be in. The second example is just using the distributive property. So I'm going to multiply my two first terms. Next one I multiply the 2i and the minus 4i. I'm going to have a minus 8i to the second power. I can't have an exponent other than a 1 with my I. So I'm going to refer back to this list. I squared is equivalent to a negative 1. That means I'm going to take the I squared out and replace it with a negative 1. And since the negative 8 is being multiplied to I squared, it's the same thing. It's going to be negative 8 times negative 1. So now that becomes a positive 8. My last thing is to make sure I'm in the correct form. My constant should be first, followed by my imaginary number. I have a few more examples that we will walk through. In this example, I'm going to start with the distributive property. I'm okay with my exponents because I don't have an exponent other than 1 with my i's. Now it's a matter of just combining like terms. My constants would be my negative 12 combined with the minus 2. And then I can combine the two imaginaries, which would be 36i. In my next expression, I have exponents other than 1 with the I. So now I need to replace these. I squared is equivalent to a negative 1. So I'm going to change my first term to be 2 times negative 1. The second term is fine the way it is. My third term, the constant, is fine. Now for my last term, I have I to the third power. I cubed is equivalent to negative 1i. And I'm just going to write that as negative I. So now I just need to simplify a little bit further. I would have a negative 2 for my first term. My last term would be a negative 3 multiplied to a negative I, so it will become positive. And then last, I'm going to combine my like terms, keeping in mind the correct order. My constant should be first, so I have the negative 2 minus 5, and then I have my 7i plus 3i. This next example is a multiplication of two binomials. So in order to simplify, I need to start off with the FOIL method. So I'm going to multiply my two first terms, 6 times 3. Next I'm going to go to my outside terms. That would be a positive or plus 6i. my inside terms, I would have a negative 6i, and then my last terms would be multiplying the negative 2i times that positive I. That would be negative 2i to the second. I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So I'm going to replace that I squared with a negative 1. So I have 18 plus 6i minus 6i. Next I have negative 2 times a negative 1. That would become a positive 2. My constants add to equal 20. And this time, my imaginary numbers just add out to 0. So my simplified answer would just be 20. Okay, I'm just going to start through simplifying this a little bit. I have the distributive property with the 2. I also need to distribute this minus or negative I. I will get an I squared in my last term. I times I is I squared. I squared is the same thing as a negative 1. So if I want to change this to negative 1 times this 5, and actually it's a minus 5, this would change into a plus 5. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. I'm going to start off with my constants. Those are my only two constants. I can combine those. And then next I'm going to look at my imaginary numbers. I have a 7i combined with a minus 2i, minus 3i, so my final simplified answer would be 15 plus 2i. Now I have 4 examples for you to try. Just press pause. When you're ready to check your answers with my solutions, hit play again.